DNC has.
The power that be wasn't, or the powers that be weren't going to let that happen, of course, which is, um, why we got Ken Martin, which is deeply unfortunate. Though I think that considering what a close race it was, what was the final tally? I mean, it certainly wasn't a blowout in Wickler versus Martin.
It was a little bit. I mean, it was 100 votes more for Ken Martin. But I do have good news. You're a little bit down on
There's weight in both
Martin.
directions, though. There's weight in both directions on that. I've seen like previous DNC chair meetings, certainly considering what Ben Wickler represented, and I know what you're going to say here. Okay, Ken Martin was certainly the second best option.
Well, yeah, pretty. That's of the realistic candidates. Yeah,
of the realistic candidates.
He is pretty good. I mean, he is like the Minnesota party chair. That's the whole Tim Walz, we're going to do Leninism with only one seat type thing. I think like the way that I think about this is that Ken Martin represents a return to form, almost like this pre-Clinton sort of relational, like machine politics type of politics. Whereas Ben Martin kind of reflected a more modern take on that. So it's still like a pretty big improvement to the previous Democratic Party sort of establishment model that we were going under. So I'm not that down on Ken Martin. He also had to make a lot of, concessions, some publicly, some privately. And I'm actually somewhat bullish on Ken Martin, even though my preference would have been like Ben Wickler, obviously.
Yeah, we definitely could have gotten a worse outcome. And hopefully he learned some lessons from both the popularity of Ben Wickler in the Democratic chair nomination process, the votes that went to him, and also just in what he's done, at a state level. I haven't talked with or about Progressive Victory in a little while because obviously we're kind of in the recovery period of getting, we'll say, I don't know about your personal preference. You have more in the stock market tied up than I do. I was not happy with the results on November 5th. I know that it's been pretty bullish for the upper crust, but obviously we're not done with electoralism. We're just kind of waiting for a Democratic Party that's worthy of the effort and investment. And I think you see a lot of that at a state level. There are a lot of, like, we talk often, as you said, like the Midwestern, one vote majority Leninism, or where you have like very left-leaning, very populist individuals who are operating at a local or state level. We don't see so much of it on a national level, but that just means that's kind of like the platform that we need to build off of.
Yeah, and I think that is also the direction we're moving in. So, I kind of feel like if we make it to the next presidential election, progressives are maybe not going to win, but in a very good spot. I'm maybe a little bit more hopeful or naive about this than other people, but it also isn't how I felt before going to the Florida Democratic Party conference. So this is actually a good time to talk about what Progressive Victory did itself to try and help Ben Wickler, and then we can talk a little bit about what I saw at the Florida conference.
All right.
So what we did specifically is we basically have a bunch of state leads, and they each have their state teams in Progressive Victory. And what we did is we basically got a bunch of them to go and do small events in their state, like these meetups. And we had this really nice card that they printed out. And we got as many of our volunteers from that state to come out and sign the card. And then we mailed that card to their party chair and vice chair. And then we did pictures of all these meetups, and then we posted it on LinkedIn and tagged the party chairs as well. And maybe hearing this at first, you think to yourself, okay, so some lefties are going to sign some cards. How is that going to convince anybody? But it's actually kind of more power. It's kind of showing your power level. It's indicative of a large number of people who are willing to come out and take the time to meet up, sign a card, figure out where to mail it, and then figure out who their chair is. To them, they feel like that's indicative of a huge trend. Same way that senators, when they get calls and they tally up the calls that they receive, they find those calls as indicative of a broader trend. They kind of assume if a message reaches them, then that means that, oh, that's a huge message.
You're also kind of
Um,
you're escaping the innate lack of respect associated with just always online activism. In the same way that getting 1,000 people to protest outside of City Hall is infinitely more effective than having a viral tweet with 100,000 likes, because everyone who liked that viral tweet is like not going to do anything, but the 1,000 people who did show up cared enough to show up. A lot of public opinion can be shaped by like a very small but persistent demonstration of public support, whereas the easy out, I guess, liking the viral tweet or whatever, it doesn't usually indicate anything other than the fad of the moment. So yeah, no, it's essential in the same way that showing up at like town hall meetings is, or city council meetings. Just being present is a lot more effective, and things that demonstrate presentness.
Yeah, and that's something I've wanted to push for with the Florida team specifically, is going to those local city council meetings. I know that's something that I've wanted to push for, like in all of the states, and there's differences in strategies and opinions. I have like on my notes what we're going to be doing later this year, but in the earlier segment you were talking about like social space, about like organizing versus like a social space. And one of the great things that I've experienced with this is that like when you have a social space that is focused on organizing, you can actually get a lot of stuff done when you have sort of like a drill sergeant keeping you on task as well. And it's why we were able to get so much done in literally under a week of notice. I kind of want to shout out all the state leads who were able to do this so quickly. We were able to do like 15 different like meetups in 15 different states. We got 200 physical signatures and 340 digital ones, and insane in under a week of like organizing work. It's really incredible.
No, it really is. And you probably wouldn't be calling in just to gloat about what you've already done. What's the game plan?
So yeah, there's a pretty cool game plan for what we're working on right now. So the big things that we're focusing on, the 5 kind of like headlining things, the races we're going into in the more broad strokes, I have some specifics too, is Wisconsin. There's a Supreme Court fight that's coming up on April 1st. That is something big that we're currently investigating exactly how we want to engage with it. We're going back to Wisconsin. There is the Virginia and New Jersey gubernatorial races. Those look pretty hot, honestly. Virginia in particular is always kind of considered like the bellwether election for how the presidency is going to be viewed, because it is the one that happens in that off year within less than a year after the president is inaugurated. There's one that I know you care about, the New York mayoral race. That is one that is on our radar that we really are hoping we can kind of get involved in. And then there's the Miami mayoral election. So those are sort of like, along with other Florida elections, that's on our radar. Specifically right now, the big thing that is our national priority is the Florida 6th congressional special election. So that's what we're working on right now. That is what we are launching in the next week, and is pretty much what I'm here to talk about.
All right, hit it. Who's the good guy?
So the good guy is a progressive named Josh Weil, and he is running against a Trump-backed former state representative called Randy Fine. So Josh Weil is actually a really interesting candidate. He is running in a very red district, and he is more progressive than I would have expected, like actually progressive, which is not what I would have expected. His talking points are that he wants to reset the economy for workers. He wants to fix the healthcare system and gestures at, Medicare for all. He wants to improve schooling, and he's even pro-Palestine, which for Florida is pretty rare. But it's a really Republican seat. So we're not doing this because we think we're going to win. We're doing this because in 2 years, when the midterms happen, if we can take this R+20 seat and make it an R+9, R+5 seat, that's the territory where the party will actually be willing to give resources to try and win that seat. So it's always good to make Republicans waste resources. And it's not entirely impossible that the anger of Trump moving so fast and breaking things right now does